All right. Hey, Nick. Good morning. How are you?
Good, Michael. How you doing?
Good. Appreciate you being on today. We've got more people jumping in. We're also live in our Facebook group as well. So we have people
Cool.
watching in there. But no, we appreciate you taking the time to jump on this morning. We'll kind of monitor the Facebook for any questions that come in as well throughout this.
Okay.
But no, appreciate you taking the time this morning. If you want to, feel free to introduce yourself, let people know. I know you're really big into the AI space, which is what the big craze, right? What all the agents are looking for. So we appreciate you taking the time to talk about it today.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, happy to be here. I mean, I've been yeah, a little background on myself. My full-time job, up until recently has been running business video school, which I still do, but it's kind of become 50-50 with the AI stuff at this point. So I've been working with real estate agents, especially in the St. Louis area for a decade or more at this point, doing video mostly. It's kind of my main focus over that time. Which, a lot of folks are more scared of video than they are of AI, which is probably reversed. We probably should be more scared of AI than we are of making a video. But we won't get too much into video today. We'll focus on the AI stuff. So 2.5 years or so ago, I started messing around with AI. That was obviously when ChatGPT came out. I've done a lot of really cool stuff with it in particular, and we won't necessarily touch on this too much today, but got to a point where I'm actually building my own AI powered tools using AI. So AI is writing my code, it's creating these tools. So I've made dozens of them. I call them adaptive lead magnets. And basically, they give each person that uses the tool a completely different output, right? Something completely customized to them and their situation. So we're going to talk more about traditional lead magnets today, but that's kind of the step that goes beyond it, which we can get into at another time maybe. So yeah, that's my background there. So I'd say what we're going to do today, I'm going to try to keep really simple. We'll start with just kind of a quick overview of some of the tools that I use. And then we're going to be making local guides, right? So these are basically, custom, downloadable, PDFs, things you can share on social media, send out by email, text, etc. You can run ads to them. Lots of fun ways to use them to get business. And if you follow along, I mean, you could probably have one created by the end of our chat today. So it should be fun. So yeah, Michael, is there anything else you want me to go over before we get started? Or I don't know if you
No,
had
that's
wanted to
that's
wait a few
perfect.
minutes for people to pop in or
Yeah, we got more people jumping in now. Looks like we got some good mornings hitting all over Facebook too. So,
great.
yeah, no, that's perfect. No, we're excited. Again, appreciate you taking the time to do this. This was a request of several agents that were wanting more training on this. So we're really excited to get this going to see how it can be beneficial in their business.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool, cool. Well, let me ask a question to get started, if you don't mind. Because obviously everybody is kind of has different levels of experience, different things you've done with AI. So I want to start there, if you guys don't mind. So if you want to tell me, maybe just start, typing in the chat. What have you done so far? You don't have to tell me everything. Maybe the most advanced thing you've tried with AI, or maybe your favorite thing that you've done with AI so far, something that's been useful in your business. It won't necessarily change what I'm going to teach you today, but it will probably affect kind of how fast or slow I move, right? So if everybody here is like, I haven't done anything with AI, we need to start at the beginning, we can do that. On the other hand, if everybody's a little more advanced and you've done some things with AI, you've generated some content, or you're talking to it every day as your personal assistant or something like that, will all be very helpful to know. So yeah, if you want to start there, just tell me a little bit in the chat. We're still got more people popping in anyway, so we'll just give another second or two to join. But what have you done? What's something you've tried with AI, and in particular, something that was useful to you, right? Like if you just spent a lot of time talking to it and debating with it or something, that's something. But we want to look for business oriented stuff, right? So have you generated stuff for social media? A big one's writing property descriptions, right? So I know a lot of people are using AI to write better property descriptions to save time on writing property descriptions. Some people like doing it, so they don't want to use AI. So there's obviously difference in opinion there. So let's see what you guys are doing. And again, if you are new to using AI, tell me that, because that'll definitely help me as well. If you're like, I don't do anything with it, I need to start from the beginning, that'll definitely help. All right, so let's see what people are saying here, and then we'll get into it. So writing stuff using ChatGPT, right? I mean, that's a good, it's best at writing things, right? So anytime we can
I
get it
think
to write a content for us, that's a good use.
I think
Image
every,
generation, yeah,
I
that's a
think a
lot of
lot of
fun.
people,
Well,
Nick, are doing MLS descriptions.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Right. That was probably the first one, and I know the 2.5 years ago when it came out, it's like, oh, you can write these for me. I don't do it anymore. That's great. Good. Let's see. So this is from summer. Just learning, overwhelmed, figuring out which apps to use. Oh yeah, I get that. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. Let's see. Used AI to get ideas for our new logo. Love it. Copywriting. Use it to write content, lead capture site. Okay, good. So, yeah, so Google search replacement, social media posts, great. Try and have a conversation. And by the way, read these if you're here. Read the comments, right? Because you may get some ideas. This is always one of my favorite things is asking people, "What are you doing?" Right? Because I almost always get a new idea. Try and have a conversation with AI where I ask it to speak from a first-time home buyer standpoint or investor standpoint to try and get a better idea of that's great, right? So role playing. I mean, that's talk about a huge opportunity, right? You can role play almost anything you can imagine. Write market reports. Only thing I've used for new ideas, right? And then writing. Okay, cool. Sorry, I'm taking a second there, but that helps me out a lot. Okay, well we're gonna use two tools today, and it sounds like everybody here is kind of past the total novice place, which is cool. This is one thing that's funny about I teach AI and I teach video. AI has been kind of out in the public for about 2.5 years, and in that time, the average, I go to a room, hey, who's using AI? And like almost everybody's hands go up today. I've been teaching video for 10 years and the hands are still not going up, right? So the funny thing is, I think video is still a big opportunity because a lot of people are using AI. They're sort of taking their humanity out of things. The more humanity you can put in, the better. So let's get started. We're going to talk a little bit about video at the end here, but I want to get into the actual demos and how-tos and all that. So we're going to start here. We're just going to start with a fresh, open ChatGPT prompt. Please, if you have questions as we go, drop them in the chat. I love to be able to answer those kind of as we're going along here. But we're going to start with a very simple approach, okay? There's a couple things we need to do. Now, the first thing, let me explain what we're trying to accomplish today, all right? We're going to make what is called a lead magnet. So some of you've probably heard that term before. I've worked in marketing my whole career. I've been hearing about lead magnets almost that entire time. It's not a new concept. But AI makes it 100 times easier, like no joke, than it used to be. I mean, we're talking a massive, massive leap forward in how simple it is to make a lead magnet. So what a lead magnet is, if you haven't heard that term before, is really simple. It's just some kind of piece of content. A lot of times it's a PDF, right? Some sort of guide, some sort of booklet, right? We used to print these 10, 15 years ago. Now they're mostly digital. And it's just information, right? It's useful information. It's catered to a specific kind of customer, right? So like, for example, I might have a seller guide. So here's how you sell your house in 10 easy steps or something like that, right? Or, here's my pamphlet and all the steps you're going to go through to get ready to sell your home. And for somebody that's never sold a home before, or maybe it's been a long time, that is useful, right? The idea is that in order to get the lead magnet from me, they have to give me their contact information, or at the very least, they have to start a conversation with me, right? So you might see somebody on Facebook say, hey, I've got my seller guide. It's going to give you all the steps you need to get your house sold. If you want it, comment seller on the post, right? So you'll see all these people commenting with the word seller, and then you're sending them a message and you're sending them your guide, and that's starting a conversation about real estate, right? That's the whole point. So you can try to ask for contact information, or you can just start a conversation. Those are kind of the two things most agents would do with a lead magnet. Well, first and foremost, if you don't have any lead magnets, this is going to be a major improvement in your business because it's very easy to make them now. You could make a relatively generic one, like a seller guide. Maybe we'll start there and we'll kind of refine things as we go. But the point is, if you don't have one, you need one fast because you're going to see how easy it is. And all your competitors are going to have access to these same tools, right? So they can make this stuff in just a few minutes, just like you'll be able to. A lot of this is going to come down to first mover advantage, right? So if you get out there and you start posting on social and you start sending emails and you're sharing your specialty custom guides, which we're going to get into next, that's going to be very unique. It's going to help you stand out. People are going to feel like you're doing something really cool for them. If you wait, you're just going to look like you're copying everybody else, right? So I am trying to give you some urgency here because one thing that these tools are doing is making things so much easier, so much faster that the speed is really important. How fast you do something with these tools is going to matter a lot, right? So let's start here. Fresh ChatGPT chat. I'm assuming you know how to get into your ChatGPT account. There is a free account, right? So this first step doesn't have to cost you any money. And the coolest thing about AI, in my experience, is that you just have to talk to it. And if you talk to it, you can get it to do almost anything you want. Now, before I start, I'm going to give you one additional tip, which is I said talk to it, right? And I said talk, not type, for a reason. The more information you give an AI, this is not true of just ChatGPT, but any AI in general, the more information you give it, the more specific you are, the more step-by-step instructions that you provide, the better the output will be, right? So that's why we have this thing called prompt engineering, where we're giving, how do you write the perfect way, the perfect prompt, the input, that's what we call the input in an AI as a prompt. How do we write the perfect prompt to get exactly what we want on the other end? Well, there's some tricks there, but the number one trick I've ever found is talk instead of type. Because when you talk, you say a lot more than when you type. The other thing is I'm terrible at typing while I'm presenting. So if I try to type, it's going to get really painful. It's going to take forever. And so there's two ways that I do this. The easiest is there's literally a button right here. You can dictate to ChatGPT, right? So if I click that, it's going to start listening to me. And then when I click the check mark, it's going to transcribe what I just said. And there it is, right? I'm going to delete that obviously, but you can see it's picking up what I say pretty easily. That's one way to do it. And then I actually use a third-party tool. It's called Whisperflow, that I just have to hold a button down on my computer and talk to it, and it inputs it. And I'll use both, just, but that one's just a little bit faster. I'm just used to using it. Just giving you a heads up if you don't see me click the microphone. So what do we want to do? Well, the first thing I want to do, let's start with the generic guide, right? We're going to make something by the time we're done here today that is a lot more useful than a generic seller guide. But let's start there, right? Let's assume that you don't have any kind of lead magnets at all, and we want to create something that's going to help somebody sell their house. And in fact, maybe we should be talking about buyers. In fact, if you want to chime in, tell me in the chat, like, would you rather focus on buyers or sellers today, right? Because I know traditionally everybody wants a listing, everyone's sellers. But I also know the market is sort of shifting pretty aggressively the other direction. And so maybe buyers are more enticing to you. So I'll give you a second to answer that. But what we're going to start out doing is let's just make a sort of what I would say a generic guide, right? So it's got, information on how to buy or sell a house. It's got some step-by-step instructions, some things, warnings, things like that. And then we're going to take that and we're going to refine it and we're going to make it even more specific to the kinds of people that you want to attract in your business. And what I mean by that, and I'm kind of saying this so you can keep chiming in with buyer or seller in the chat, right? Because you can kind of guide where we go here. But what we're going to eventually have is something that only your perfect client would care about, right? So let me give you a couple examples. Let's say that you like working with first-time buyers who just got married or who are about to get married, right? Well, I want to make a guide for those people. And the things that they're experiencing, the challenges that they have, are going to be different than somebody that wants to buy a luxury property, right? Or let's say you want to work with families that are about to have that third kid, and all of a sudden that house they thought they were going to live in forever isn't quite big enough, right? So they got to move up, they got to get more rooms, right? So we could make a guide that's specific to them. We can make guides that are specific to zip codes, neighborhoods, right? Anything you can imagine is basically now possible and is pretty simple and straightforward. So I gave you a little time. Let's see what people want to see here, and we're going to get started there. So I'm seeing, all right, so we're getting more specific with the VA home buyers. I like that. We'll come back to that one, right? And senior, good. You guys are already thinking about this the right way, but I still see mostly sellers. So we're going to start with sellers. All right, good. So here's what we're going to do, right? We're going to talk to ChatGPT. So I'm going to start out by using the little dictation button here. And the cool thing about this, and I can send you more formal prompts that'll sort of save you some of the steps and some of the typing. But the reality is, as long as you're just being very specific with what you want and you're giving lots of detail, you're usually going to get something pretty good back. So we're going to click on the dictate button and we're just going to explain what we want, right? And so if you want to kind of take some notes on what I'm about to say, you can. And like I said, if you want to reach out later, I can send you these prompts and even some better ones I've written before. Oh, I don't want it to pick up that first word. Let me start there again. All right, here we go. I need to create a real estate seller guide. I want to create a PDF that is approximately 8 to 10 pages long, and it needs to have step-by-step instructions on all the things you should do to get ready to sell your house, advice on how to price your home correctly, advice on how to market the property, things that you should consider fixing or upgrading versus things you might want to skip. Anything outside of that that I should include that you would recommend, go ahead and include. What I want you to do is search the internet for some examples of the most polished and professional seller guides that you can find. Any advice that you can find on creating really, really good quality guides for someone thinking about selling their house, and then incorporate that into your design. Now, before you begin that work, I want you to respond to this prompt and ask me any follow-up questions that you may need in order to develop the best possible guide for my business and my ideal customer. Now, just look at how long this is, right? So this is the first thing I want you to notice. It's going to take a second to transcribe. That's a lot more than I want to type right now, okay? And I could get more detailed, but catch another thing that I did here. I didn't just say, go make it. I added the part where I said, look, if you need to ask me questions, I want you to do that first. If you don't say that, there are some cases where it will still ask you questions, but usually it won't. Usually it's just going to say, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. And it may not ask me any questions right now. It may say, hey, look, you gave me enough information. That's enough talking, right? I'm gonna just go ahead and get to work on it. So we'll see. It looks like it may be ready to ask me some questions in a second, or it may just go ahead and start doing the work, right? Now, another thing that I did there is I told it to go search the internet rather than just relying on its core training, which basically means that AI is trained on data, right? It's fed a bunch of information. We won't get into a ton of that, but it's basically provided with as much of the access to the internet as possible when it's trained. And then once the model's released, it doesn't update any further. So for example, if there's things that have happened in the past few weeks or months that we want it to know or incorporate, like changes in the market conditions, or, maybe the rates have shifted substantially. I know they haven't really shifted much lately, but, theoretically, if we tell it to go search the internet, it's going to go out and it's going to do that, right? If we don't tell it to search the internet, it's going to rely on its existing training data. In some cases, that's fine. But in other cases, it's not going to be completely up to date. So we want to make sure we tell it that, all right? So that took a second. That was like almost a minute that was kind of filling there, right? So it's coming back to me. And here we go. It says, all right, this will make a killer seller lead magnet. Before I build it, here are the key choices I need from you so I can tailor the guide perfectly, all right? Now, this is already getting past what I was going to start out doing. So I'm going to let me just do this first, and then we're going to come back to this in just a minute. It's still giving me questions to answer. By the way, whenever it does this, if you ever look at it and you're like, oh my God, I don't want to answer all these, you don't have to, okay? You can answer the parts you think are important. You can give it what information you want. It is your employee, okay? It is not your boss. So you tell it what to do. It's going to ask you questions. It's going to clarify. But if you go, look, I'm just going to answer this first one, and then you go fill in the rest, it will do that, all right? So it's giving me a bunch of questions here. This is quite detailed, probably more than I want. And so let's start there. I'm just going to say, look, let's just start generic, and then we'll improve as we go. To get started, just make me a professional seller guide based on what you can find. I'm not going to answer these questions yet, but let me see what you create, and then I'll give you some feedback, and we'll make it better. So again, talking to it, which saves me the hassle of typing all that out. And if we look at this, you do sometimes need to read over this because sometimes it'll misunderstand what you're selling or what you're saying. Okay, so there we go, right? This time it was much quicker because it doesn't have to go off and think, and it's not processing and coming up with all the questions to ask me. So what is it going to do? So it's giving me an idea of an overview. So drawing on expert sources like Realtor.com Seller Guide, Investopedia, NAR handouts, and modern marketing blogs, this draft synthesizes key guidance into a smart 8 to 10 page layout. It's ready to go, but flexible enough for customization once you're ready to refine it. All right. So that looks like so far we've got the overview and structure, right? And it says, okay, now it's going to ask me some more questions. So what vibratone would you like? Let's see here. Sleek, friendly. We're going to go with friendly. This is the Midwest after all, right? So let's go with a friendly Midwestern tone. Don't worry about any standout services or branding. And yes, let's include a moving checklist. And I like the showing etiquette, but we don't need bilingual text. All right, so it's still asking me some clarifying questions, right? Which is probably a good thing. It's probably doing that because I asked it to again earlier, so it's being a little bit careful now. But those were a lot easier to answer than like the 10 different steps it gave me a second ago, okay? So it's going to go ahead and get started, and here we go. So what I'll tell you right now is whatever this is going to create, it's going to give us probably an outline, and then we're going to refine it further, and we're going to get a final result. It's going to take about 15 minutes to create your completely customized seller guide, right? At the end of that, we're going to go over, we're going to make a PDF out of this too, something that you can download and you can give to people, right? But the reality is, like, this is not hard. We're just talking. Like, this is like having a professional designer on staff, right? You don't have to think it through. You don't have to know what should be included. If we go back to what it said at the beginning of this outline, let's see, where was it? Where did it tell me where it got this information, right? It was saying, let's see. Oh, there's too many chats here. It was talking about Realtor.com. There it is, right? Realtor.com, Investopedia, NAR handouts, and modern marketing blogs. That, in my mind, is what's cool about AI, right? Is that it has so much more information than you're ever going to be able to find, right? Like you probably have plenty of ideas. So whatever those are, put them in, right? Say, hey, look, that's not the advice I would use. I would give them these step-by-step instructions, right? I would say you should do this first, not that first, okay? And it's just going to tweak it. But most of the structure, most of the flow, right? Like what goes where, what order to put things in, what's important to include, what's not important to include, all of that is already there. And so if you're sitting down and you're trying to make something like this and you're thinking it through, you're probably wasting a lot of your energy. What I'd rather you spend your time and focus on is refining what it gives you, right? And that's the advantage here is we can skip 90+% of the initial work, but then we can put that into refining it, right? So here we go. This is let's take a look at it. I was giving it a second to kind of generate. All right, so we got a cover page idea here. It's got selling your home is a big deal. It's not just finished transaction. It's going to understand what to, okay. So this is still kind of an outline, all right? And so let's see what it says at the bottom, and we'll come back to looking at it if we need to in a second. All right, so that's the Friendly Midwestern draft, completely with a moving checklist and showing etiquette. Format this into a polished PDF. Let's say yes. Yes, go ahead and turn this into a PDF that I can download. Also, let's make sure that we've included as much detail as possible. So right now, this kind of looks and feels like an outline, but it needs to have details on each of these steps included in the final PDF. So go ahead and create that for me. Okay, so we're going to let it work on that, right? It's going to usually take a couple minutes. While it is doing that, I want to see if you have any questions so far, right? I mean, you might be looking at this going like, this isn't hard. And it shouldn't be, right? Like, that's my point is like, once you see this, I don't want you to think, oh, wow, he taught me all the tricks. Like, there are some tricks that I'm trying to give you here, some things you can do to kind of make this better. But the main one is just that we're having a back and forth conversation with it, and we're giving it feedback, and we're giving it instructions, and it's refining what it's doing as we do that, right? That's not hard. This isn't hard. I mean, this shouldn't be hard, right? I mean, this is the kind of thing that now we have access to these tools. What is going to be hard potentially is cutting through the noise, right? You know, getting people to pay attention to this stuff as the average agent is able to create these things and crank them out left and right, right? So while it's doing this, let's talk about some of the things you can do there, right? What I would do with this, and it's taken a while. I mean, sometimes AI is faster than others, and the GPT-5 is usually a little faster, so apologize it's taking so long. But what I would do further here, and this is what I want to come back to the chat on, is I'm going to refine this guide for the kinds of people that I want to attract, okay? Now, that being said, right now, today, if you make a seller guide, especially one that's kind of like a St. Louis seller guide, if you want to make it for kind of the region, that's probably going to perform pretty well, right? That's something you can post about on social media. You can send out in your email. You can tell your friends about, and some of them may ask for a copy. But what I want you to start thinking about is how can you go further? And I would do this kind of, as fast as you can, right? So get a seller guide created. In fact, if you are watching this, just start doing this on the back end. Just keep yourself muted, obviously, but otherwise you can start making one yourself. But then start thinking, how do I go further, right? So I'm going to go back to, there was a couple of suggestions earlier actually in the chat here. So let's see. We had a senior sellers that think downsizing, right? That's a good one. So we might touch on that. And then VA home buyers, all right? So let's take those because I don't know why this is taking so long. It's analyzing. Oh, it's actually going to make, yeah, it's trying to make me like a really polished PDF, which is cool. That's great. So we'll come back to that in just a second. I'm going to start a new chat while we're waiting on it because I hate just sitting here waiting for things to be finished. We'll see the final result in a second. So let's take one of those ideas, right? So let me see what it was again. Let's do the sellers that are thinking about downsizing, right? So again, all we got to do is just explain what we want to create. I want to create a guide. This will be a PDF downloadable guide for sellers who are thinking about downsizing in the St. Louis area. So these are seniors. They're in a situation where, they don't need all the space in their home anymore. They want something smaller, maybe something that's more accessible, maybe one story versus two, something they can get in and out of a lot easier. So I want you to create a guide for those kinds of people. First, show me the outline so I can give you some feedback on it. And then once I do that, you can go ahead and create me a polished PDF version that I can download. All right, so again, pretty straightforward process. Now, what I asked it to do is, again, outline it for me first, right? I don't have to do that, but what I find is that if you go straight to just make it for me, you'll get something pretty good. But what I've seen a lot of people do is they make something and then they just take it and they run with it and they don't ever look at it very closely. And you're going to have parts of it you don't like. You're going to have parts of it that might not be accurate, right? That provide information that isn't what you would normally say. So you want to make sure that you do sort of force yourself to take some time, right? To kind of walk through this a little bit. And so here's what we got, right? So we got an introduction, which is warm welcome and reassurance, right? Whatever. It's a great place to downsize. Okay, right? So some of that we may want to change. Deciding if downsizing is right for you. All right, well, that's pretty useful, right? So what are some of the triggers? What are the things that, hey, the obvious ones, empty rooms, right? Things like that. Exploring housing options in St. Louis. So it's going to list some communities, 55 plus communities. That's probably useful, right? That could be its own guide, by the way, right? And that's what we'll get to here in just a second, is getting more specific like this. So as you look through this, look for those kinds of things. What are the parts of what it's recommending that could be their own guide, right? Like if you make a list of, 20, 55 plus communities within a 5-minute drive of, downtown St. Louis, or within 10 minutes of a specific zip code, right? If you're targeting people that live in that zip code, if you're targeting folks that maybe their parents are looking into these kinds of communities at this point, that's highly specific, right? Like if you don't care about that, you're going to scroll right past that post. If you do care about it, you're going to think, wow, this agent literally specializes in people just like me. Yeah, I do live in 63139 and I do want to move into a 55 plus community within 10 minutes because this is where my family still lives. That's very, very specific, right? Is it going to be appealing to everybody? No, but that's the point. The point is things that are more appealing to a specific group of people are going to be less appealing to everybody else, but they're going to attract those specific people at a higher rate, okay? So keep looking through this here, and we'll come back to that idea in just a second. Preparing your current home for sale, pricing your home correctly. All right, this all, we could give it more feedback, right? But that sounds pretty good. And now it's going to ask, okay, so do you want to lean more heavily on the local St. Louis details, like naming specific fit? Yes. Or keep this more generic. I'm going to say, yes, let's make this more specific. I do like the idea of naming specific 55 plus communities, as well as the popular condo complexes. So go ahead and do that research and put the final PDF guide together for me. All right, so while it's doing that, let's see what our other chat came up with here. All right, so what I want you to watch is we're going to take this a step further in just a second, but this took about 15 minutes, right? I mean, if you're doing it on your own, probably 10 or less, because you're not going to, I'm kind of talking more than I would need to if I was doing it on my own. It created a PDF already. So let's see how it looks. There's no guarantees this is going to be amazing, but let's go ahead and click on this PDF here. It's going to download it. And let's see what we have. All right, so not great, right? This is just generic sort of like, for one, it's just putting too much space on the page, but we're pretty close. All right, so this is again, and this is not polished, right? This is going to be pretty generic. It's got formatting, but there's no colors or none of that. I'm going to get to that in just a second. We can make something a lot nicer than this. But this is, it's a start, right? So we've got all our content in here. I think it should have a lot more information. So that's the first thing I see is like, okay, this is sort of bullet points. It's kind of surface level. Let's get a lot more detailed. So we just come back and tell it, right? We want this to be a real detailed step-by-step guide. So right now it looks like a lot of the content that you've created is sort of bullet points or maybe an overview. I want somebody to be able to read this and feel like they actually know what they should then go do. So before we worry about a Canva ready template or anything like that, I want you to go through and add more detail to each page. And imagine that the reader who's looking at this needs to feel like after they read a page, they actually know what they should go do. Okay, so we're moving pretty quickly, right? One of the things I want you to understand is I want you to incorporate your expertise, okay? So if we go back to, let's see if I have that pulled up still. Right. So if we look at this, and let's skip to one of the details, right? So okay, for example, step-by-step preparation checklist. If you look at this right now, this is generic. This is not your advice, right? It's not necessarily bad advice. So for example, declutter each room by donating, tossing, or boxing up items. Buyers want to see the space, not the stuff. Okay, duh, right? Like we all know that we should clean up our house. Maybe some people don't, right? I mean, you're like, there's one buyer, there's one seller, they didn't, but we all probably know that, right? But maybe you don't think that. Maybe you think there's a different way to do it. Maybe there's parts, maybe you have a special 5-step decluttering process that you talk about with your customers, right? That's the kind of stuff you want to incorporate. Now you can edit it directly, right? Like you could make this an editable document, open it up in a PDF editor and change it, or you can just tell the AI, right? What I will tell you, kind of a little bit of a warning, is if you have super protected information, you have a strategy no one else has ever used before, you probably want to do it manually. Just for the small chance that the AI is going to absorb your ideas and end up giving them to somebody else, all right? I don't worry about that. I don't think that's all that important. But just a quick sort of side note, if you're concerned about that, you can edit these things directly, right? But let's see what else it says. So deep clean everything, that's fair. Maximize natural light, boost curb appeal, depersonalize, and then light staging, right? Well, one thing I noticed right off the bat is like each one of these could be more detailed, right? So light staging, it's like, okay, rearrange furniture to show off the room flow, add, like that's very basic advice. What else could we say, right? Now I already told it to add that detail, so we'll see the new version when it's done. But that's the kind of stuff you want to be analyzing, all right? So let's see where it's at. It's still doing its thing. We'll come back. Oh, this one's still doing its thing too. Okay. Well, I'm going to skip ahead because I want to show you one more thing here. So let me open up one more chat and we'll kind of go into this. And I apologize these are taking so long. I mean, I don't know if ChatGPT is kind of lagging today, but it is making some pretty detailed stuff. So that might be why it's taking a second. Sort of the last thing that I wanted to share with you today, right, is, okay, I get this PDF. It is not terrible looking, right? So example, when we look at this, like it's got headings, right? It's got bullet points. It's got some professional formatting there. Obviously, there's a lot of unnecessary space on the pages, and we're going to fix that too. But it's not polished, right? There's no color, there's no logos, there's no pictures, graphics, images, anything like that. Well, I'm going to show you one more tool that you can use here if you'd like, and that's Canva. So I assume most of you have used Canva. It's very common in the real estate space at this point. Canva now has an AI. Now this is a paid Canva account, so I don't know what kind of AI access you get in the free one. I think a paid Canva account is kind of a no-brainer for any business owner. I use it almost every single day. But if you have a paid Canva account, you have access to the Canva AI. And this is where you really get into the gold, which is getting AIs to work together, right? Just like a team of employees, right? If you have one employee, they can do great work. If you have a team, a lot of times you can get sort of a multiple, synergies, right? You can get kind of the synergies out of them. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a much more polished PDF using the Canva AI. So so what I would do here is once one of these is done, I'm going to kind of give it the same instructions, but they're taking a while here. So I'm going to just go ahead and start from scratch again. And here's the one thing I want to tell you before I do this, all right? One thing I've learned, having tried this a bunch of times, is Canva's AI is really good at creating one page at a time. It is not good at creating a series of pages. Like if you try to get it to do that, it just tries to create a PowerPoint presentation, which is not good, right? We want a PDF. So I'm going to give it instructions on each page, right? So what we're going to do is I'm just going to talk to ChatGPT and tell it again what I'm doing. I'm going to create a PDF seller guide in Canva. I want you to create the prompts that I'm going to give to the Canva AI to create each page. Let's start by creating a prompt to create the cover page for the report. Now, this specific report is it's going to be a senior seller guide for people in St. Louis who are thinking about downsizing. So to start, just write a prompt that I can use in the Canva AI to create the cover page for that report. Also include my company name, ABC Realty, and my phone number, 555-555-5555. Now, again, you can say whatever you want, right? You can include whatever contact information you want. If you need to have, license numbers, things like that, that's all fine. What I'm doing here, now I could go to Canva and I could just say all that in here, right? I could say, hey, look, make a cover page, all this kind of stuff. What you'll see is typically when you work with a separate AI and you have it do this kind of stuff, it's going to give you a more refined prompt, right? So this is what it came up with. Let's go ahead and copy this out. And we're going to throw this over into the Canva AI and see what we get, right? And again, a lot of this, if you haven't noticed already, is just a lot of back and forth, right? So giving it something, getting its output, giving it another response, refining it. But we're going to see what it comes up with for us. And you'll notice that some of the things it added, right? It said design should have a warm, approachable Midwestern feel, et cetera, right? Okay, so here's our draft. So we can already tell, I'm not 100% happy with this because it doesn't really look like a cover page, but this is already a lot better, right? It's got some professional elements to it. It's got a header. It's got color in it, right? So we're already heading down the right path even on our first attempt. So one of the cool things you can do with AI is so if I want to use this, if I want to make edits to it inside of Canva here, I just click on Use Canva Editor. It's just going to open up the document. You're going to see your normal Canva setup, right? So you can do all your editing if you want to. But all I'm trying to do right now is I'm going to open it up and I'm going to download it. And the reason I'm going to do that, so click here, click on download, right? This is how you download it when you're ready to use it. But I'm going to download this first version and I'm going to give it back to ChatGPT. So when it comes to AI, when it comes to tricks and tips and things like that, this is one of my favorite, which is just use the back and forth between two separate AIs to get better results. So this is what it gave me. I'm going to come back to ChatGPT here, and I'm just going to upload it. So I'm just adding it from my computer. Let's see, where is it? Downloaded it, and let's see. It's this one. So let's go ahead and upload that. And I'm going to just tell it what I got. So here's what Canva came up with based on your prompt. This is a good start. I do like the colors and the feel, but I want this to be a cover page. I don't want to have a lot of text in it. Maybe have an image of something from the St. Louis area, or maybe a 55 plus community might be a good image to include. But let's make sure that it's a little bit cleaner and doesn't include all this text. All right, so I give it the feedback, and then it's gonna come back and it's gonna kind of analyze it. So, all right, hopefully that was enough time for it to. Okay, here we go. We got our other PDFs created. Okay, so this is the one for the St. Louis area, 55 plus options, etc. So let's download that one now. See what we got. Okay. All right, so table of contents is downsizing right for you. Compare your housing options, etc. Going further. Okay, we do have some weird stuff in here, right? So some formatting issues. So that's not good. But other than that, we do have some useful stuff, right? So we've got, and this is warning, this is where you start checking if this is real, okay? AI does hallucinate. It's not perfect. So if you look at this and you're like, okay, Heritage of Hawk Ridge, is that real? Like, I'm not familiar with 55 plus communities. So you can tell me if these are real or not, right? Inverness. Okay, that one's new to me. Greendale Manor. It sounds real. Probably want to check that, right? Meadows of Wildwood. So you've got all this information. You just need to double check it. And that's where the real work comes in, right? Like the initial, like, look at this guide. We've already got like a 10, 15 page guide. I know, again, I don't know why these little squares are showing up everywhere. We're going to tell it that and hopefully it'll get it fixed in a second. But there's a lot of information in here, right? So this was work we didn't have to do. The work you do need to do is looking at it and making sure it's accurate, right? Checking that kind of stuff. All right, so here's what we got. Now we could kind of work on this, and unfortunately, it gave us a little bit of some formatting issues. But we're not going to use the PDF that it provides. What we're going to do instead is what I just did. I got a little ahead of myself with the Canva stuff because I was just trying to fill time while it gave us a version of this. But let's tell it to make prompts for Canva. All right, I'm going to take what you created and I'm going to create a more professional looking PDF using the Canva AI. So what I want you to do next is take the content that you've created here and split it up into individual prompts for each page of the PDF. So I should have a different prompt for each page. It should include any instructions that are necessary to have the prompts create a consistent look in the guide. I'm just going to create it one page at a time. So for example, give me a prompt I can give to Canva for a cover page. Give me a prompt then for page number 2 with the content included in the prompt, as well as all the instructions on the design, and then do the same for the rest of the pages in the PDF. Okay, so that's going to do its thing. Let's come back to the one we were just working on a second ago. So we're going to take this new one it gave us. We're going to see what this does in Canva. And I want to open things up for questions. I know we've done a lot at this point, right? So hopefully you're getting the sense, and the main takeaways here is that you're just going to do a lot of back and forth, and looks like Canva's giving me issues now. Man, you got to love technology when you're trying to do a demo. There is always something that will go wrong and make you look like an idiot in front of people, right? So let's refresh it, try it again. We'll put that in there. Okay, well, Canva just crashed on me. That's fun. Okay, well, maybe we'll leave the Canva alone. We'll come back to that in a second to see if it'll work. But you at least got a quick example of it. That's the first time I've run into this problem with Canva. So, of course, when I'm trying to demo it, right? But let's come back to the previous chat. This is the one we were breaking into pieces. And there you go, right? So what you're getting here is these are the prompts you're going to copy over into Canva to design this more thoroughly, right? Each individual prompt for each individual page. Now, one thing I'm going to tell this, and this is based on experience, is we need to make sure that all of the prompts are consistent in things like the font they use, the colors they use, any sort of layout rules. So add those details to each one of these prompts so that when I give them to Canva, it's going to output something where each of the pages look very consistent with each other. Okay, so it's going to keep writing this stuff. I'm going to just pause there for a second because I know we've done a lot so far. But let me see if you guys have some questions, right? Because I want to make sure I know there's a couple questions earlier I want to come back and address. So let me answer these, right? Are there any risks of plagiarism when asking AI to create some literature for you? If so, how do we avoid such risks? No, there really aren't risks of, well, let me say this. Possibly, if the AI is to go out and quote something directly and not reference it, in my experience, that is usually not a problem. What it's doing is it's just sort of writing what it can based on what you gave it. This is not something that we're going to go out and try to copyright. That is also part of this, is that you cannot copyright AI written materials, right? So you can't take this and say, hey, I made this, it's mine, no one else can ever copy it, all right? So that is part of why I say, look, use these tools to move fast. Don't try to use them to make your masterpiece that you're never going to ever let anybody copy, right? Because that's not really how this works. When you generate something with AI, you have the rights to use it, but you can't copyright it as if it was your original work of art, all right? So that's kind of not quite the answer to your question, but that's something to keep in mind. Now, on the risk of plagiarism, it's very unlikely, and I typically don't worry about that, right? Because I mean, it's going to be trained on information. It may take little snippets of text from other guides that it was trained on, but it's typically not going to directly plagiarize significant portions. But it might be something to run it through, right? Like there's tools online, plagiarism checkers, things like that you can use. These are PDFs, they're freebies, you know, it's going to be very unlikely unless, you know, you really literally just went and ripped off, you know, a top agent's guide that anybody's ever going to even pursue that. But, you know, it is a fair question, right? So it is something to probably run it through a plagiarism checker, just double check, make sure you're not copying anything. But again, most of this information is going to be stuff that's probably not protected in that way. Is ChatGPT my preferred AI platform? In some cases, right? That's a good question because the reality is different AIs are good at different things. So, for example, like I write a lot of code because I build my own AI tools, right? And I'd say that I don't build them. The AI builds them. I just instruct it and give it feedback and give it the ideas. But I use Claude for that. ChatGPT can write code too. It does a pretty good job. But I've always found that Claude is better. It just writes code better than the other platforms do, right? So that's my preference if I'm writing code. If I'm going to generate, like I just showed you, if I'm going to try to make some PDFs or something like that, unfortunately it crapped out on me, right? But Canva tends to be better for the look, right? The polish. You saw the difference there. What ChatGPT created was really rudimentary. It even had errors in it with those little squares and stuff. And then Canva is going to be more polished and professional, right? So there's definitely going to be different tools that are useful in different cases. In a general sense, for research, for brainstorming, ChatGPT is great. Another thing that's really good about ChatGPT is that it has account-wide memory. And so if you've had a chat with it in the past, it will remember what you said in that chat. Right. So if you talk to it about ideas or things you're doing or projects you're working on in a different conversation, it will remember that in other conversations, which is obviously very helpful. Yeah, I love Canva Pro. Yeah, me too. Did you download to your computer from Canva, but then uploaded back into GPT? Yes, that's what I was doing, and I do that a lot, right? I even do that within the same tool. So, for example, like I could come back to ChatGPT and upload this, right? I was showing you this earlier, and it's got these formatting issues in it. I can just upload this back to it and say, hey, look, you gave me a PDF with some weird formatting in it. Why would that happen? Can you go ahead and fix that? And it will look at it. It will analyze. It can analyze images. Okay. So it'll look at it and it'll say, oh, yeah, you're right. You know, I do see those squares in there. Let me go ahead and fix that. And it doesn't always work, right? I mean, that's the fun of AI. You never know if it's going to work or do quite what you want it to. But it can look at things and it can interpret them, and that's very helpful, right? Let's see. Advice for how to learn all these programs for those who've never used any of these. Yeah. The reality is the best way to learn AI is to do things, try things, right? The coolest thing about AI is that it is kind of all knowledgeable. That's not really true, but that's kind of how it feels. And so anything you want to know how to do, you just ask it. Like that's how I learned to do a lot of this stuff, right? Like I went on ChatGPT and I just said, "Hey, if I wanted to do X, Y, Z, how do you think I should do that?" Sometimes it's going to say, "Look, I can do that for you." You know, it'll ask you some questions and it'll just do it. Other times it's going to say, "You know, the best way to do that is to use this other tool and here's the process you should follow." Now, that being said, obviously there's lots of courses, there's lots of classes. I'm considering running a challenge here in the next couple weeks that might be helpful to you, so I'll bring that back up in a minute. But that's the kind of stuff you want to do, right? It's unfortunately it's just a matter of practice, just using the things, experimenting, trying stuff, kind of seeing what happens. That's probably the best way to learn it. Now, that being said, I will tell you one of the overwhelming things about AI right now is there's an unlimited number of tools. There is literally like almost any tool you can imagine. You can generate videos, you can generate music, you can generate text, obviously. You know, you can have it do projects for you. You can have it do research for you. There's all kinds of things it can do, and a bunch of different tools are really good at one of those things. Typically, not all of them, right? So I don't know where that's going to go. There's thousands of tools right now. It's very overwhelming. And so I think it's very helpful to start with the primary ones, right? So that's why I'm showing you these two today. Canva and ChatGPT. They're very common. Almost everybody's used them once or twice at the very least. And so that's where I would start. Okay. I would just start with the ones that are most obvious. Experiment, ask them questions, do some of this back and forth, and you will get there, right? All right, I'll come back to any more questions in a second. I want to see if I can get Canva to work. This is bothering me. I want to see if I can refresh it a couple more times and see if it'll start working for me. Because what I'd like to show you is now taking all of these prompts that this just created for me and feeding them into Canva, right? Because I created this guide. Again, this is for people who want to downsize. So let's see. No guarantee. Let's see if this will work. Nope, still down. All right. Well, you saw it once at least, right? So you get the idea. And it's, again, the same process. You're just going to keep talking to it. You're going to give it feedback and you're going to keep going. And that's really unfortunate because that's never happened before. All right, other questions. We can keep refining these guides here inside of Canva, or sorry, inside of ChatGPT. So let's do that. I'm gonna say, I'm just gonna tell it what's going on, right? Unfortunately, it looks like Canva is down at the moment. It's not letting me generate my pages there. So I want you to go ahead and create this PDF for me again. However, I'm going to show you the version you created the first time, and you'll see that there are some weird formatting issues in it. Like there's a bunch of squares and things like that. So I want you to go ahead and fix that for me and make this look a little more professional. Also, make sure the cover page looks better. The text on it should be bigger, so it's very obvious that it's a cover page. So I'm going to explain that, and then I'm going to upload the file that it created earlier. All right, and this is, again, I wouldn't necessarily do it this way. Let me make sure that's the right file. I think that's right. We'll open that up, and we'll submit it once it uploads. I don't know, maybe I'm just having like an internet connectivity issue because this is taking a while to upload too. Or maybe both ChatGPT, maybe Canva is built, it probably is built on OpenAI's technology, and OpenAI is probably having issues, and that's probably why Canva's not working. So, great morning to do this demo, right? All right, so we'll see if it gets that fixed. We're gonna go ahead and do that. But again, we're dealing with some tech issues at this point. I apologize for that, but unfortunately, only so much we can do there. So what I want to kind of wrap this up with, I want to give you a few more minutes to ask questions if you do have them. But I just want you to start thinking about how can I make guides? How can I make PDFs, right? Like this. I mean, you saw what we came up with here. I mean, again, I'll open up the previous one, right? And we're looking at like 10 pages of information. Actually, this one, oh, see, that one's giving me an error. Man, yeah, this is fun. At least some of it worked, right? At least some of it came out. But we got these 10-page guides that we were able to come up with. And yeah, there's a little bit of formatting we need to fix here. There's some things to tweak. That's going to take another 10 minutes when the tech is working correctly like it does 99% of the time, except for when you're demoing it, of course. And then you're gonna kind of refine it a little bit. But the point is to make something for your ideal client, right? So that's the last thing I want you to start thinking about. And a couple of you, the good news is a couple of you already know who that person is, right? You're talking about VA buyers, talking about downsizers. If you don't have that sense, guess what? That's another thing AI is really good at, right? So if you're not sure who your ideal customer is, if you're not sure who are the people that you're trying to attract into your business, work with ChatGPT. Say, hey, look, I need to develop a customer profile. I need to have a better sense of who I'm trying to attract in my business. Can you ask me some questions to help me figure that out? And it will, right? Like it's actually like we talked about earlier with the role playing. It's kind of an example of that. It's very good at that kind of thing. So if you get it to ask you some questions, it's going to help you determine who your ideal customer is. And then that's going to tell you what kind of guide to create, right? So it may say, hey, well, it sounds like you like working with first-time buyers, but you also want to move up a little bit. Maybe you want to be selling or helping people buy larger homes, bigger commissions, things like that. So I think your ideal customer is actually somebody moving up into their second home. This is typically a family. They have kids of this age. They typically live in these areas, whatever it is, and then use that information to create a guide, right? So now you're making a guide for families with 2 kids who are just, the house is too small, right? In the St. Louis area, or, folks that need to move out of, I live in 63139 in the city, right? So maybe it's, folks that need to move out of that neighborhood, or maybe it's folks that need to move out of a specific neighborhood, right? We use zip codes. Maybe, I live in Southwest Garden neighborhood, right? So maybe it's people that want to move out of that neighborhood, people want to move into that neighborhood. You could make guides. One of my favorite things you can do with this is make guides for things that are unrelated to real estate, right? So again, if you know that you like working with young families, maybe you're going to make an activity guide for kids, plan your weekend for your kids under the age of 10. Here's 10 things you can do in this area or in this zip code or in this part of town. The more specific, the better, right? The more useful that information is to the kind of customer that you really want to attract, the more likely it is they're going to say yes and raise their hand and ask for it. It's kind of that simple, right? Okay, so let me answer any remaining questions. And I apologize again for the tech. Unfortunately, I can't control that part of it. But maybe we can do this again if it was frustrating. I'm sure it was certainly frustrating to me. Would you recommend getting the paid version of ChatGPT? What are the main benefits to doing so? You should get the paid version of ChatGPT if you're using it a lot. that's kind of that. It's that simple, right? There are some features I think you'll get in the paid version, but mostly what you get is just more use, right? You can use it more times per day, per week, per month. Unless you are hitting your limits. If you are hitting your limits, if you're getting to, it's say, hey, you can't send another message for the next 5 hours or something like that, that's where you would go ahead and upgrade, right? If you're not hitting those limits, you probably don't really need to worry about it. It's just going to come down to are you able to get what you need to done or not? I upgraded pretty quickly because I use these tools a lot. All right, once we have the guide ready to distribute, how do you recommend we get it out there online to get new leads and attract new customers? Yeah, well, so unfortunately, again, that was another thing I was going to try to show you with Canva real quick, but it's very simple. You just tell people about it, right? So what I would do is, okay, let's say I've got my downsizing guide and I've polished it up and it's ready to go. I'm going to go to Facebook. I'm going to say, hey, I just created a 10-page guide, or you don't have to say the pages, right? But you can say, hey, I just created a really detailed guide for anybody who is thinking that maybe it's time to downsize. Maybe you're thinking about moving into 55 plus communities. This guide is for you. Let me know if you'd like a copy, right? Comment on this post if you'd like a copy. One of my favorite things to do with lead magnets is actually to go to Facebook groups. So you go into the Facebook groups and you look for people who are asking these questions, people who are saying, hey, I'm thinking about moving or I'm thinking about downsizing. Like, what should I be thinking about? Hey, I've got a special guide for you, right? Because what most agents will do is they'll say, hey, I can help with that. I'm a real estate agent. Let me know if you want to chat. Well, that's what everybody says, right? So if you come in and say, hey, I've got a free guide, it's less pressure, right? It's not a sales conversation. You're just going to give them your guide. And then they just basically say, look, great, let me access this. The next thing that happens is other people see that comment and they ask for your guide too. So I'm not kidding. Like, I've done this, and these are more like national groups, but I've had some posts where 40 people have asked for my guide or my free AI tool. Like 40 other people, not the person who asked for it initially. They usually say yes too. But all these other people come and they're like, oh, I need that guide. I need that guide. I need that guide, right? So that's one way to do it. I think you should make videos about it, right? You can take pages from the guide and you can just take the information on the page and basically read it into a camera. Here's 5 tips to get your home ready for staging. At the end of the video, you say, by the way, I have an entire guide on this that will give you a bunch of other information when it comes to downsizing. If you'd like the guide, comment on this video, right? So that's what's so cool about this process is when you do this, you're not just making one guide that you can give people, you're making content you can share on social media, right? You're coming up with new things to talk about to get conversations started. Now, what you can do with Canva is you can, again, ask the AI. So I'd go back to ChatGPT and I'd say, hey, I want to make some, so I tried to fix it. Let's go ahead and download that. We'll see if it fixed it or not. But I can say, hey, I want you to create some prompts for Canva to make some graphics to promote this guide. Okay, already better, right? This already looks like a better cover page. And it looks like it fixed it. All right, there you go, right? Oh, and that part's messed up. So that's not necessarily messed up. That's just that it made the boxes, the text is too long and it's overlapping. That's easy to fix, right? We just go in and say, hey, redo this so the text doesn't overlap. But there you go, right? So that's a little bit of an improvement, at least on the design of that guide. So you can see how this works, right? You go back to it. Now, I still would make the guide in Canva. It's going to look better. It's going to be more presentable. But because we're having these tech problems right now, this is a good improvement at the very least. All right, we're almost out of time. Let me ask everybody one question because this is one of the first times I've done this training. Unfortunately, the first time I have this tech issue. Sorry to keep bringing that up. It's just really bothering me. But I do have a question for you, and that is this. I've thought about doing a challenge where over the course of a week, we would create some of these guides, right? Like something maybe more specific to your ideal customer. And then we would create all the marketing materials that go with it, right? So all the graphics, scripts for videos, social media posts, copy for emails, everything that you would need to market your lead magnet. And then we would put all that stuff out, right? So we would start cranking that out. We'd put it out on the internet. We'd promote our guide to a bunch of people across the area. And that would be like maybe 4 or 5 total sessions over the course of a week working together. I haven't put that together yet because I wanted to get some feedback. So my question to you is should I create that challenge? And if the answer is no, like that's okay. Like I'm not going to be offended at all, right? But that would be helpful to me because this is all pretty new. It's pretty cutting edge still. A lot of people seem like they could use a little more guidance on it. So if you think it would be a good idea to host a challenge where again we'd have more time, we'd be able to kind of go through and create these things step by step. All the marketing materials, do the distribution, post about it, get people interested, probably get some leads even by the end of the week. I can do that. I just need some feedback, right? So if you think that's a good idea, say yes. If you don't, you can private message me if you don't want to, that's okay. That's okay if it's not a good fit, right? I'm just kind of getting a sense. It looks like a lot of yeses, so that's good to see. Very cool. Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that. That is very helpful feedback. Let me answer a couple more questions. Michael, I know we're at the hour mark, so if we got to wrap up, you tell me. Otherwise, I'll answer the couple remaining questions.
No, go for it and keep going. This is good. But yeah, it looks like you're
Good.
getting a lot of yeses to your challenge there, which is awesome.
Good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that
think
is
I've received
awesome. Yeah, I
very
appreciate
cool as
that. This is
well.
this is and
Yeah,
this is fun. I mean, again, this is really bothering me. The Canvas stopped working, but
yeah.
it is fun to do. So, okay, let me see here. Couple more questions. Okay, if an agent wanted to future-proof their business with AI, what should they start doing today? And if agents want to take the next step after this webinar, where should they start? Okay, good questions, Leo. Thanks. First question is how do you future-proof? I'll tell you right now, I think a lot of agents are doing this wrong. You don't future-proof your business by replacing yourself with the AI. Okay? You want to use it to write proper descriptions, write some of your social media posts. I think that stuff can be fine. But I think if you want to future-proof your business with AI, you increase the amount of value you're delivering to customers using AI, right? Like the thing AI is letting us do now is make stuff that's more specific to your perfect customer. Like I think the future of marketing is meeting a business or a business owner like yourself, because I mean you're the face of your business, right? Your face is your logo. That's basically your brand, right? We're all individual salespeople here. So I think the future is you meet somebody and then everything you see from them feels like it's specifically for you, right? Like all their posts, all their guides, their content, like everything just feels like, man, this is really meant for this person, okay? That's what AI makes possible, right? So that I think is how this is all just theoretical, it's just my opinion, right? But I think that's how we future-proof ourselves is we continue to deliver more value, right? We make guides that are more detailed or more specific to the perfect person. I think that's more important. I don't care necessarily about the detail. I care about the advice being for that person, right? So for example, when I say declutter, that means something very different to a home with a toddler in it than another home, right? And I say that because I have a toddler in my house right now. So if you were to tell me to declutter my home, I'm like, well, a lot of this clutter is like her toys, okay? Like I don't know how to get rid of that stuff, right? That advice is going to be different than it would be for somebody who kids just moved out and they have a bunch of old stuff and they just need to put it in a storage unit, okay? So that's the kind of thing I want you to think about is how do I make my advice really specific to my perfect customer? So that's number one. I think that's how you future proof. Then the second part of that next steps, right? Like I just talked about my challenge. I think you asked your question before I mentioned that. There's a lot of good feedback, so I do think we will do it. I've been thinking about it for a little bit now. And by the way, if you want to be on my email list before I forget, I did whip together a little form before this in case people said yes. I wasn't sure if you would or not, but I did just put this together this morning. If you do want to sign up to be on our email list so you hear about it, just go to that link and fill out the form. Okay, so just so you know, and I'll thank you, Leo, for also posting all my info there. I appreciate that. But if you are interested in that challenge, or like I have other courses I'm working on, like this is all really new, so I apologize. It's still a little bit disorganized. But I am going to be teaching more and more of this in the coming weeks and months, right? So if you want to be on that list, if you want to have a chance to hear about these challenges, I can help you. But I also think a lot of this is just trying things, right? Experimenting, right? So some of these questions you have, right? So like, can ChatGPT add graphics? Yeah, ChatGPT can create graphics, right? So if I come back in here, I can tell it that. I can say, let's just try it real quick. Go ahead and make me a graphic that I can use on Facebook to offer this guide to my friends and connections. Make it square and use bright colors and make the font easy to read. And again, I'm just kind of throwing this together right now. We could give it more specifics. But ChatGPT does have image generation capabilities, right? Now, it's not the best image generator, okay? Like I would still typically use Canva for this if it was working, but it does make images, right? So a lot of this, again, is about speed, not perfection. So if I can get something done quicker with ChatGPT and just get it out there in the next few hours, that's going to be better than waiting forever trying to make it perfect. But we'll see what that comes up with. I have no idea what it's going to create, which is always kind of fun, right? But ChatGPT definitely can create graphics. It usually takes a minute or two. And then you can give it feedback and you can improve on it and all that, right? Let's see. There's a lot of stuff that you can tell it's AI and not. Yeah, right. Nicole saying that earlier that a lot of things. Yeah, here's the thing, right? I know the people who are using AI to write their social media posts. Like not all of them. I'm not, like a savant at this stuff, right? But like a lot of it's obvious. You read it and you're like, okay, that feels like the other guy's post. That's the problem with AI, is it's gonna get to if you use it to talk for you, it's gonna make you sound like other people, right? It's a tool. So if we're really intentional with how we use it, we can make really cool stuff that is completely unique because we came up with the ideas or we brainstormed it with ChatGPT and then we kind of came up, but we can make stuff that's really unique and cool. If instead we're trying to say, hey, how can I stop doing my job? Which your job is basically talking to people, right? So if you instead say, I just want to, not have to do my job anymore, I'm gonna let AI talk for me, that will gradually become, I think, more and more obvious, right? So yes, some of the stuff, a lot of the stuff that people are posting is very obviously generated by AI. It uses a lot of the same phrases, a lot of the same, writing structure, etc. And I do think, that's going to start to backfire on those folks. I mean, in fact, there are certain people that I know that I'm like, look, I don't even read their social media posts anymore because I just know they use AI to generate it. So at a certain point, I'm like, why do I need to read something ChatGPT wrote when I can just go talk to ChatGPT, right? So that's a great point. Definitely something to be careful about. So there we go, right? So this is a basic graphic, but the good news is it did spell everything correctly. So let me try one more as we're wrapping up here. All right, this is a good start, but I want something that has an image in it. In particular, make it an image of like a 55 plus community that somebody may consider moving to in the St. Louis area. And again, I don't know what that's going to come up with, but we'll let that run. And if you can stick around to see what happens, we'll see what it comes up with, right? And you will only get so many images you can generate per month, things like that. So don't just sit here and crank a bunch out and think it's never ending. Like there is, and there is like it's using energy, it's using electricity. There's an impact that it has when you make these things. But it can make your graphics for you as well. All right. Let's see. Check the output. Yep, that's a good point. Leo's on it. That's true. Okay. I think I answered the question. So thank you, folks. I appreciate that because I know this is a lot. I know it, we had some unfortunate sort of tech stuff here. But I hope you get the point, right? The point is have a conversation, give it feedback, be as specific as you can because I think being more specific tends to get you a better result, and be ready to give corrections and feedback, right? Because there are going to be problems. There's going to be glitches. It's going to come up with something you don't quite like that you need to change, but it's very quick versus doing this by hand. Like if you were to sit down and make the graphics and make the PDF and crank it all out and do all the research, that's going to take you hours, if not days, versus this might take 30 to 40 minutes, right? And again, I'm doing sort of some extra bells and whistles here for you. You can keep it a little bit simpler when you're making your content. So keep it simple to start, build on it as you go, give it feedback, and you'll get what you want eventually, right? Cool. So we'll let that run out. We'll see what it comes up with if you want to hang around. Otherwise, I know we are almost 10 minutes past our scheduled hour here. So I apologize for going a little bit long, but I do appreciate your time here with us. And yeah, if you have any other questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. I'll try to hang around for a couple more minutes to answer them. But otherwise, you're good to go. Thank you so much for having me.
No, this is super helpful, Nick. Thank you so much. It looks like Sherry
Good.
asked the question too. Follow-up scripts created to know how to approach these leads. Yeah,
Oh
I think
yeah.
that's going to depend on. Yeah, go ahead if you want to take that, Nick. Yeah.
Well, and yeah, I mean that is you just ask for it. You know what I mean? Like absolutely, it can. And I think that's what the challenge I was talking about earlier. I think that's what we're going to be doing. We are going to be basically making all of that, right? So we'll make the guide, we'll make the social media posts, we'll write the copy, we'll make graphics, kind of like this one. This is getting better. It's at least showing a house there. You know, it will make graphics, we'll make the emails, right? We'll make emails for promoting the guide as well as for following up when somebody downloads it, because that's a great point, right? If somebody asks for your guide and you give it to them and you get their contact information, you got to stay in touch with them, right? For one, you got to send them the guide. So there's at least one email or some or a text message that you have to send them that's going to have the guide in it. But then there's additional touches, right? You should continue to follow up. You should continue to ask questions. And AI can basically help with all that, right? So yeah, that's absolutely true. It's something you should do. It's something that the AI can do. And if we wanted to, we could just ask it, you know. And again, it's the same process. We're going to give it feedback. One thing that helps a lot is if you give it a sample of your own writing, right? So if you have an email or two that you've written that's in your voice, if you provide that, a lot of times it can write the emails in a way that sounds more like you, right? So that's just like kind of one tip there. But yeah, I mean, I think, and again, once you've done this once, it gets a lot easier, right? The second time's a lot easier, the third time's even easier than that. You could very easily get to a point where once a month, maybe even once a week, you're making a new guide. You're making the new content that goes with it, and you're going out there and telling everybody about it. And just imagine the amount of conversations you can start, right? So I do think this is the kind of thing that's setting aside an hour, a couple hours a week to kind of make this a new part of your prospecting is 100% worth it. You know, one thing I didn't even get into today, but like you can take this stuff to your referral partners, right? Like if you're in a BNI chapter, if you're in a networking group of some kind, make a guide, go give it to all them. Let them give it to their audience, right? It's got your contact information in it. So that there's just so many different directions to go here. I encourage you to get creative, but the point is to get started, right? Like work on making your first guide here in the next 7 days or so, or even better, if you got some time right now, hop into ChatGPT and see what you can do. Because again, it's going to be about execution, getting it done, moving fast, and those are the agents that are going to kind of reap the most rewards from this. And then unfortunately, like anything in marketing, in a couple years, this is going to be pretty normal, right? And there's going to be a lot of this stuff out there, and it's going to be a little bit harder to get to cut through that noise. So speed is of the essence, right? Cool. I think I answered all the questions. I appreciate everybody's questions in the chat. That's a lot of help. And thank you again for having me on.
No, thank you, Nick. Super helpful. And for everybody watching, Leo posted Nick's form link in Facebook as well. So if you're watching a recording later, yeah, the link is in the comments there. So make sure to go there and click it. But yeah, I think everybody on should sign up for this. I think it was really, really helpful, Nick. Appreciate it. Learned a lot. So we appreciate
Of
you being
course.
on and taking your time. Yeah.
No problem. Happy to be here. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being on. Nick, thank you again. And we'll talk soon.
Sounds good. All right. See you guys.
Thanks, everybody.